This is fun. I'm really actually enjoying doing this while also realizing how difficult it is to really break all of these down.
Ain't nothing worse than a smart dumb.
Hey yo! Hey yo! Hey yo! Hey
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Smart Dumb Podcast. This one's going to be a little bit of a switch up, actually quite a bit of a switch up, and it's a hybrid type of situation. For those of you that don't already know, I am a poet. Been doing this for over 10 years, but really found my stride and turned up over the last 4 years. Quarantine giving me a lot of time to improve my writing, and then spending the last year or two getting my delivery, getting comfortable when I go up on stages. 2023, around 15 um, features and a smooth 4 or 5 so far this year, be it a solo feature or being a part of a group performing. So along the way, I've developed a reputation for having a very strong pen, being very intricate, layered, clever, all these types of things. And I have a book that is coming out very, very soon. Like, my birthday is August 8th. It will be out before then. It's probably coming out in July. So putting that out there, put pressure on myself to just go ahead and get that last little piece handled so we can be a whole published author. Now, this particular piece that I'm going to dive into is not on the upcoming book. However, it is definitely one of my favorite, despite being one of the newest, definitely up there as far as like checking off all the boxes of my highest level of capability. So basically, with the book coming out soon, and just in general with having so many layered poems out there, it's been suggested that we do a deep dive, and so I decided, hey, I'll just do one myself. And then it was a matter of picking which poem. So I asked some followers on IG. Some came back to me. I think there was about 2 or 3 mentioned, but the very first one is Honor An Oddity. Honor An Oddity is the poem that I wrote regarding this current relationship that I'm in. I have written poems previously for other people who are no longer relevant to my life. There's one piece, interestingly enough, that is dedicated to a friend, and nobody is aware of which poem or who it's to, which is perfectly fine to keep it that way. But this one is very intentional. This one is for the woman I'm dating. I absolutely hate girlfriend for 2 40-year-olds. Just me. No shade or none of that, but this is just not. So I'd say the woman I'm dating or the significant other and all that, and it just makes it awkward for me because it's all these extra syllables, but here's what it is. So this particular piece is for her. I wrote it in February. I don't remember if there was a specific event, Valentine's Day event that I was going to be a part of. But it was in that theme and in that vein. I did do one. Shout out to Bloom Bar. Shout out to Ife. I don't know if I ever intended to perform this piece there. Probably not, because then I would have had to. It wouldn't have been enough to write this poem. Then I would have had to start memorizing it in 2 weeks, and that's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea to do. So didn't do it. So, but I did come up with this piece somewhere around early February. I had the major opportunities. I had to perform it. There's this one artist who will bring us together to socialize, and then we'll typically also take some time and share some works. Typically, we do what we're something new or something we're workshopping before it goes to an event or a feature. So that was the first time that I read it. It was hilarious because my lady, like, she isn't shy one and doesn't like to assume. So like I'm saying it to her and she's like, it sounds like this is about me, but I'm not sure. Plus, and then it was like one of the first times she's meeting a lot of my people, so she just didn't want to, be very obvious and react. But it was like at the end of the poem, there was one line. It's like, okay, I'm definitely talking about you specifically. So definitely, part of a very memorable. I mean, there's been a lot of memories behind this poem that already made it special. That I'm very appreciative of. So that was definitely one of them. I then took it to the stage. I went to Voices in Power. I believe that was the first place that I performed as far as at an event. So I was very close to having it memorized, but not quite. So I got a lot of it done, and then I had to reach in and check a line or two on the phone. I was right back to it. I performed it at a Busboys. It was my second Busboys I've ever featured at, and this was part of the set. It was the closing piece in the set, if I'm not mistaken. And then also I was able to perform at Pure Poetry on their 12th year anniversary. And that was the main piece that I chose to share. So again, that speaks to like being comfortable putting it on these elevated platforms, and then even more so as a feature or as one of featured artists on a showcase or closed mic, kind of speaks to how much I really appreciate what I was able to come up with. And it's also, again, been well received to the point that they were like, people would love for me to break it down. And so, break it down, we're about to do.
I said I'm here to honor an oddity, but now that's no way to talk to or about this young lady. So I'm here to show reverence to a rarity.
So I start off with Honor An Oddity. It was one of the first lines I came up with. I still haven't figured out, maybe I'll look it up later, but I don't know if there's such thing as tonal alliteration. Honor and then the word oddity are not spelled starting with the same letter, but they have similar sounds. So I wanted to use that to start. It sets the tone. It's going to be a theme that I do as far as whether it's tonal or just a straight up alliteration with this, a, that, this, that. But we started off from the very beginning. With that being said, honor and oddity. Oddity is not something you normally use if you're going to describe a woman, but even a significant other that you're speaking highly of. So I wanted to address that. Like, there's no way to talk to or about a lady. But so let me switch it to another alliteration. I'm going to show reverence to a rarity.
That love and respect, I will give it all away like charity.
Here's an example of what I'm going to call a connecting phrase. For those of you who are not already familiar, I'm a huge battle rap fan, and I definitely have stolen or borrowed some of their tactics, some of their methodology, and applied it to my poetry delivery or even writing. One of those is what I'm going to call a connecting phrase, where that phrase ends one thought here, but also then is key to a different thought. And those two don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. Actually, they'll have nothing to do with each other. So in this case, I'm saying my love and respect, I will give it all or give it all away, right? Then I'm saying give it all away like charity. So love and respect and charity aren't necessarily related, but they're both something that you can connect to. Give it all away.
Because she was willing to open up and let me in. So whether that context is emotionally or physically, either way, it's still charity because I will give myself away to her heart so you can use me. And that's
all right. So that context, as far as opening up to let me in, can be physically or emotionally. But in either case, it's still charity that I'm talking about because I will give myself away to your heart. So I said, give it all away previously, but now I'm saying give myself a way in this particular sense. Then there's I give myself away so you can use me, which is the prime or the hook of a pretty popular Christian song. Shout out to William McDowell. Apparently, this song is released back in 2009. I did not know that I was 15 years old. That is crazy, but definitely stood out. It was a line that came up to me, and I wanted to put that in this poem, so I did. But also, again, let me flip. Like they say, give myself away, and in this case, I wanted, in order to make it fit, in order to make it fit in this poem, I turned away into a way.
And it's heaven sent. Finally finding a girl that I can settle down with, that I settle with.
Some people probably might have thought that that was the song that they are hearing or recognizing, and this "and that's heaven sent" line is kind of like a confirmation for them. And I guess even if you're having it explained to you, you can see like, oh, okay, he referenced a gospel song and then said heaven sent. You know, that's what's up. Settle down with, not settle with, like that's not a perfect rhyme, but heaven sent, settle with is close enough of a rhyme. Also, just that settle down and not settle with. I think anybody who's hit 30, hit 40 have had their share of relationships that have been interesting to say the least. And you know, it feels good to come out of experiences that weren't successful in the past and know that I'm not having to compromise and, you know, take like, okay, something that's very important to me. I can get that at the expense of something else that's very important to me. Now there's still, quality people out there. And, um, you know, so really, as far as this relationship, the onus is on me to be doing my part because I definitely found one.
So please don't confuse my wit with parody. Emotionally, I'm just as committed. This pair is a parody. This pair is a parody, not too much on despair or disparaging.
So here's definitely a complex, set of lines that we have. So one is, there's wittiness to who I am. And even there's a little bit of that early on in this poem, but please don't confuse that with parody. I'm not making a mockery of what we have going on. We're equally invested. This pair is a parody. So I wanted to rhyme pair, parody, and parity. Parity also meaning two things that are equal or, similar in stature, equal. So we are equally invested. I then say not too much on despair or disparaging. So going back up that line prior, you have despair is a parody. And then this pair ended up being connected to despair and disparaging. So while despair and disparaging are two very similar terms, then you also have despair, and disparaging all having very similar pronunciation or enunciation in the early part of those words, then also connecting it, bringing it back to parity, which then originally rhymed with parody.
And that body. See, Destiny's Child already made a song about it, so I'm not worried about who don't think I'm ready because I'll show her that I can handle those parody. Now what we got?
For whatever reason, I started thinking about Destiny's Child songs. I guess it was because I wanted to find a way I was going to address that I also like. I appreciate how well my partner, how beautiful is and how she does a great job at keeping herself together. So, I mean, yeah, previously I mentioned, emotional investment and her vulnerability. And, I can name all these other attributes that I appreciate about her, but I'm not going to lie and ignore that elephant in the room. Of course, I also find her physically attractive, right? So, Destiny's Child has their song, and then the next line I'm saying, I'm not worried about who don't think I'm ready for this, and by then someone would recognize that I'm referring to the song Bootylicious. And so now I say, you're the only one I'll show I can handle those parodies. All right. Shout out to my dog, Chaos itself, from one of the times I performed and said para, or did that line. He was like, I get it, it's titties. And it's like, yeah, That's that's what I'm referring to. So thank you for throwing me off. Not even throwing me off. Like I had to laugh when I got back to the poem, but yeah, that was a fun moment for sure. That was when I was at Pure Poetry, but at the open mic, at in open mic, excuse me. So really enjoyed that. But two things on that. One, parodies then brings us all the way back up to the initial part of this section of the poem when I said parody. So we have parody as far as something you make, something that's a joke. You have parody as something that's equals, and now you have parodies, which is not a word; it is a phrase, um, and so it's using that um, again, I'll say enunciation to refer to three different things with three different meanings. Also, what I do in this line is I don't finish pair of these. Um, that is also intentional. That is also taken from battle rap. And I know battle rap isn't only one that does this tactic, but like this is a kind of a mini game to keep the audience engaged. They should have been following along if I've been, if I wrote properly and then delivered properly. They're following along with what's going on, so they know that's how I'm about to land the line. Whether it's sometimes like, oh, okay, I already know it's coming, or right as I'm saying it, they're following. So even though I don't completely say that phrase, they know what it is. So by not finishing it, it almost kind of activates their brain to be like, wait a minute, he didn't finish it. What was this supposed to be? What it's supposed to be. I've done this before and I will continue to find opportunities to do so. There's a different poem. It wasn't long ago that my feet was dragging this transportation on some yabba dabba, and I don't finish do, but I do start the next sentence saying do. So here's another act, and that's one that I've actually always gotten. Um, the crowd has always rocked with me, or knew where that one was going. So opportunities where you can do that, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's just so refreshing or so satisfying. When it lands, it usually works well with the crowd too. They enjoy it. It's like, okay, we see you. Keep going, keep doing your thing, right?
So what we got? Two boring people digging each other enough to engage in a paranormal activities.
So I think first we'll start with that sentence itself. So it's these two people, very simple. We're not flashy. We're not trying to do too much. Like that's just that who we are individually, and that's not what's super important to us in our relationship. Um, but we are definitely into each other a lot, and we're able to enjoy ourselves even in engaging in some of the simplest of things, going out, hang out, and catch spoken word, go eat as she's getting indoctrinated into the DMV, go for a walk. Some of the simplest and things we're able to enjoy each other's company. And I mean, it can be more than that, but it also can be just that simple, and it still be great time because of the two people that are spending time with each other. So that was that whole line. But then there's boring and digging, and maybe someone might have already heard, like, connected how bore can be to dig into something. um, Maybe they feel like they heard that already, saw those two together. They will be referenced later. And then you have pair of normal activities, but the way I say it is paranormal activities, which sounds like that one movie franchise. And so that one is also very well received. Like they saw me take paranormal activities and then just say it in a way that fit the sentence I was already speaking of. So definitely enjoy. You use your accent or vernacular to bend words to fit the situation. That's one joy or beauty in spoken word. That's interesting. I mean, I guess depending on the situation, maybe it also flows in written, or sometimes that bending that you're doing is so extreme that it's not going to get caught. I think para, may actually no, maybe not. I think this is one of those. So if somebody like doesn't hear me, hasn't heard me, they're going to say pair of normal activities. It's a toss up whether they're going to see pair of normal and turn that into paranormal. Um, excuse me. Fortunately, there's, again, even in that one sentence, there's basically multiple things to describe already. So there's something they should get out of that, even if it's not everything, that's intended.
We're so right for each other, so it's easy to act supernatural.
No false pretense, nothing flashy, nothing extra. I am who I am. She loves me for that, and she is who she is, and I love her for that. But then you also have, so it's the same thing as paranormal activities, you have supernatural. So supernatural has its own base meaning, but it made sense to say supernatural in the description of the point I was making here. Hopefully or possibly at this early, someone is saying paranormal and supernatural, and there was some relation to them besides the fact that I took those words and took those phrases and reused them or broke them down into a way that they could fit a different sentence. They're also similar to each other, and that will be solidified, we'll say, in the later part of this section.
So forgive me if I stretch to fit, but it seems that we're close enough to coordinate.
Yeah.
And this apparel increase and appreciate in value, and that's no fabrication and no cap.
Here we have probably what I'm going to say is my favorite part of this poem because of the cleverness and complexity there is to it. So I put a scheme here that we'll say is a clothing scheme. All right, so forgive me if I stretch to fit. So we have stretch, fit, we got seams, we got clothes. We'll speak on that. We got this apparel. We have clothing that appreciates value. There's fabrication, and then there's cap. So the thing with clothes that I want to speak on is where clothes enough to coordinate is a super stretch. They're really not the same. Like, I have no problem admitting it. I'm using clothes like what you're wearing, and I'm trying to bend it into close. And they don't, and it's just not a clean fit. That just is what it is, which is why I started this sentence on forgive me if I stretch to make this fit. So I'm basically setting up and telling y'all that I'm about to do like a reach. Yeah, it's about, again, battle rap term, and people do that. Again, I've heard it in rap. Yeah, there's some examples that are quite egregious, and honestly, this is one of them. So I'm saying, yeah, forgive me if I stretch and make a reach to add this or have this be part of this scheme I'm about to do. So in the midst of using that closed scheme, in addition to using the closed scheme to talk again about this relationship and speak highly of it, I'm also kind of doing like a breaking the fourth wall to say like, hey, yeah, I'm about to be real extra here. So again, one that was very fun to coordinate. If you hear me say it, is the whole coordinate, like that's Ludacris used it in one of his songs, and then also he's referencing a movie. I remember, shout out to Ludacris and Redman and Fonte. Busta Rhymes did more of his music videos, but like those are artists who love referencing pop culture, and even if it wasn't like recent, but like stuff we grew up on. So Friday references. Yeah. Now I'm blank on all those, but I think y'all understand what I'm saying. So like I reference Ludacris reference the movie, which I honestly don't remember what the movie was. So maybe I'll put in comments. Somebody can put it in comments. So and then and then the other one that is I don't know, we'll say redirection, but it actually fit, is apparel. So this apparel. So one, it could be interpreted as this is a pair that will appreciate and value, but also early I was considering like saying this, making other onomatopoeia as like a as like a pause, this peril, appreciate and value. So that one is kind of up to it's like the user's choice as far as which one the reader might have caught potentially. And it's also one of those situations where due to the due to my reputation, due to my ability to be complicated and flip words and all those types of things, something that's fringe like that, it's like they're gonna say, well, he's typically complex in his writing, so this probably does fit. I just haven't figured it out yet. So every now and then I get away, I can get away with something because my reputation precedes me. So, it's just a matter of hard work and consistency is one of those perks on the side that it gets me. Then no fabric, and fabrication, cap. So fabric is used and cap is used.
Because I'm appreciating value. I know better than to treat her like she's just anyone, take her for granted and treat her like she's just anyone, because it takes two to make a thing go, right?
One more time, saying I'm appreciating value. So appreciate into appreciating the value of who she is. I'm not taking her for granted as if she's just anyone. Then there's me saying, then there's me referencing granite or mentioning granite, which I'm about to get to very, very soon in this poem. And I'm not taking her for granted as if she's just anyone. My next line says, it takes two to make a thing go right. So I use anyone for the one, and then in my next line referencing the two. Finally, we have what's pretty much the most obvious to listeners and readers. It takes two to make a thing go right is that Rob bass song, the hook from it. All right. What I did for the first time at the Pure anniversary show is I said it takes two to make a thing go right, and turn thing go right into a question. So now it's taking song and then turning it into a question, just to add one more layer to it. It was the first time I'd done it. Probably one I'll keep, but also probably one that would not actually be on the book, or maybe it would. I don't know.
I said, boring, digging, and granite. Paranormal and supernatural will make it out of sight, but I want to rock right now.
So now what we have is using the poem to explain the poem. And it's basically summarizing what I just said. So first I said boring and digging way at the beginning of this section, but then just recently said granite. I said it as granted, but the way I pronounce it, it can also be interpreted as granite. So boring, digging, and granite are all connected. Then I say paranormal and supernatural will make it out of sight. So you got paranormal and supernatural connecting them two because they are both something you can say out of sight, as well as out of sight is an older term, but it was meaning excellent or great, or, it's a positive phrase. So what we have could be described by old folks, older even than me, my old ass, is out of sight. But also, again, your paranormal, supernatural, out of sight. And also will make it out of sight was following the it takes two to make a thing go right. And my next line is, and I want to rock right now. So now what we have is make it out of sight, which had multiple references, meanings, and things like that. And then I go into I want to rock right now, and I got that one at 3. So 1, it's finishing or continuing that song. It's the beginning of the first verse. 2, I want to rock. Well, the rock was related to boring, digging, and granite. And then 3, a rock is a term slang for a wedding ring. And so that third one leads into our next line.
This isn't your immediate expectation. You're still making sure I'm meeting your expectation.
the wedding ring is not her immediate expectation. Is not one of those situations where it's like trying to check something off in a box, like we're really, really taking our time and building something for real. And then after that line is still observing if I'm meeting your expectations. So I felt like immediate and I'm meeting you is again close enough to have as consecutive rhymes. Then I decided, like I did a retro, another again major reach, and I was like, well, the way you say I'm meeting your expectations, I actually could even pronounce it such that you can hear meteor in there, and then that comes back to the rock. So that one is again, it was not what I originally thought of. It's quite the stretch and the reach, but also if somebody heard that, it's one of those like, yeah, it's a very, I would say rare, but like unlikely thing that somebody might catch. But if they did, I did tease that out there a little bit.
You're able to control your emotions and not turn interest into irrationality without putting up a wall, still willing to be vulnerable. Like, for example, she doesn't hesitate to let me know when I'm doing well, and that's deep.
Now, this one is interesting, just from the simple fact that, like, yeah, just a couple lines up was like this super technical, super layered, multiple meanings. I mean, I say interest into irrationality, and yeah, that's alliteration. But other than that, this isn't a very complex. This is not a complex line, but it's so important and it's factual. And that's one part of poetry that sometimes gets overlooked, and spoken word. So yes, it's great to come up with multiple entendres. Again, find a series of alliteration while saying something that actually makes sense. Saying something that actually makes sense is an important part of spoken word. Bending words, saying a word, but in such a way that it rephrases or links into something else that original word isn't necessarily meaning. All of these things are great things I enjoy being able to do in my poetry. But one underrated piece of spoken word is just saying something that is true and real, something relatable. And sometimes you don't have to be complex to get something that you just want to share and connect with the audience on. As far as this one, it's very near and dear. I have been part of a lot of less than ideal relationships, which is both romantic and friendships. And one thing that people in poor relationships will do is hide their feelings from their partner, because in the past they might have said or shown that something is going well or they appreciate what it is. And instead of that individual saying, all right, cool, I have a cheat code, I have a blueprint for what to continue to keep this relationship going strong, they go a different route and say, oh, well, I got him, I got her. I can take my foot off the gas. Like, I got what I wanted, the title, I got what I wanted, the relationship or the marriage or sex, or whatever the case is. They got what they wanted. And now this isn't, okay, let me continue to build on something. It's like, all right, who's next? Who can I hunt for next? I'm just bored, or, I was looking for that at that particular time, but now it's Tuesday and I'm over it. So this being something of actual value, that both of us, a real true partnership, that's not something that she has to worry about. That's not something that I would do. It's like, no, I actually will come back to the beginning. First statement I made, like, oh, okay, now that I know this works, let me continue to do this. Let me emphasize this because that's something that my partner, can appreciate and enjoys. So very important line, nothing crazy, won't be, not going on no shirt. It could go on the shirt, but it's not going on like the Writing Hall of Fame or anything like that, but still was never going anywhere in this poem. I remembered that. I didn't even feel like turning it, trying to make it extra. Like, it's okay for the realness, and genuineness of it is the strength in that line. At the end, I'm willing to let me know what I'm doing well, and it's saying a well is deep. Like again, no Hall of Fame type stuff, but something in. And it was almost kind of like, okay, there's no complexity or cleverness here, and then here's metaphor well is deep, and then it's leading into what I'm about to do, which is actually the second favorite kind of sequence that I ended up coming up with.
Please don't get lost in my lust, lest you forget how dedicated I am to making this last. I should make a list of how. But something's missing, y'all. I said last, less, list, lost, and lust. I recited my vows, because one thing y'all know I do is be overly complex sometimes. Why?
All right, so like, man, I had to take notes with some of these. I was like, I don't even know if I'm about to address everything, right? So I know that I had started off and said, please don't think I get lost in my lust. And I might have even said lest that early. As soon as I got there, then I was like, all right, that's 3 of the words. And if I look into the last 2, okay, they actually are words, last and list. And then it was, okay, well, how do I utilize these in a sentence that actually makes sense? And so I did that. Actually, it was 2 sentences to make the thought that makes sense. So for sure, that was one that it made sense. I was like, oh, I'm for sure about to go do the thing again where I'm like, I just said this. So I said last, less, list, lost, and less. Okay, so now there I'm confirming. Maybe somebody heard at least with lost, less, and less being so close to each other, but maybe they heard it, but I'm just confirming that I said it. And one thing about my vows is, or I recited my vows. So first, let's start there. So I said A-E-I-O-U, and I recited my vows. And then vows, the way I'm saying it, sounds like what you say when you're getting married. So that's why I went with recited my vows, and to kind of put a bow on that one, that's why I say later on, one thing y'all know I do. All right. Now we come back and we got the vows that I keep saying, and then the sometimes it's why. So then when I thought about, so that's where sometimes why comes in. Then you have your 5 question words, which is who, what, where, when, and why. And sometimes people will group how in there, even though it's not a W, it's still one of those, base English question words. So now I have how that's connected to why, and why the letter that's connected to my vowels. And so that's why initially it was like I should make a list of how. I wanted to break that up, because if I just went into reciting my vows and that, or I'm sorry, if I would have just said the 5, and then I should make a list of how, sometimes why, and kept going, then that wouldn't have given me an opportunity to really explain how I did the whole last, less, list, lost, and less. So the sometimes why thing that I do, that I didn't break down those 5 words, is a way to slow down this poem and really let some of the complexity sink in, while generating and creating more cleverness, wittiness, and complexity there too. But I didn't want to rush past it, because it was, tooting my own horn, great great writing and executed well. And the worst thing to do when you come up with something that clever is speed past it, or not allow your audience, your very intelligent audience, to really appreciate it. So that was important. So now I come back and kind of broke it all down, or kind of explained some of it, and then added the sometimes why. So now I repeat my line. I be overly complex sometimes. Why? Well, before we even continue that, let's enjoy the fact that I tell y'all sometimes I can be overly complex, and proceed to come up with these lines just right there that prove the point. Like, I know there's a lot of people that heard some of that. There's surely something, like caught this part, but not that, but not this. Some people was completely lost. You know what I mean? And so to say I can be overly complex while being overly complex was just a little, insider that I enjoyed as well, right? So now it's the sometimes why.
Why? Well, when you write something down, aren't you more likely to hold on to it? And I said write down, but if it was left up to me,
When you write down something, well, that's why I'm making a list of how. So I connected those. And now I'm on, when you write down something, you're more likely to hold on to it. I made hold on to it, I believe, a triple entendre. Hold on to it. Yes, I did. Hold on to it is retain. You write down notes, you write down your grocery list so that you remember it, so you can refer back to it. So something you're going to hold on to when your mind is thinking of what dinner is going to be, what you're going to pick up, what is this overly complicated poem that you're going to write next, and hope you can perform in front of a crowd and they actually like it versus wondering, well, what the hell is wrong with you? Just things that we think of in our minds. For example, hold on to it also is it being this relationship, this person. So hold on to as far as value, care about, maintain, retain. So really those aren't even all one thing. But then finally hold on as far as from the physical, literal physical sense of it. So yeah, doing all that to set up to say you're more likely to hold on to it, and making hold on to it have so many meanings right there. Again, it's I like it. So right first is the again, this list, just creating poetry, whatever the case is, right? But then I turn it into the direction, right, for the purposes of saying right and down. What are the opposite of each of those? It's left and up. Okay, that's cool, but can we do something with it? Yes. I was saying that I was writing down something in a list, and now I'm saying if it was left up to me, and we're making that make sense because what is left up to me?
They caught it.
see, left and up is fitting because I don't always follow the straight and narrow. Plus, I'm from the South. I'm more of a fan of curvy and thick, but you already knew that.
Well, what's interesting there is how I decided that I didn't really have something clearly to say, well, if it was left up to me, then I didn't really have it then. So I didn't go there. But I did still want to play around with that term. So I said left and up is fitting, and left and up is a way you can describe a diagonal movement. And that's why when I say I don't always follow the straight and narrow, I'm connecting those because you got your diagonal versus what could be considered a straight line. Straight, we're going to consider more of, directly north, directly forward, directly east, whatever the case is. I could pretend like I'm from the South and right down left. I didn't know. I'm legitimately, literally from the South, so I'm not even going to do it. But what I did absolutely do on purpose was straight and narrow, and then say I'm a fan of curvy and thick. So that's why I mentioned that I'm from the South. But straight and narrow, you have, I'm going to assume are antonyms. They're not exact 100% opposites, but straight and curvy are not, they're similar in what they represent, but obviously not the same meaning. And then narrow and thick, same thing. So I took, so how I just did right down and then went left up, I took straight and narrow and turned that into curvy and thick. So two pairs of these, again, literally just literally just made that up on the spot. So I ain't gonna hold you like that's why. Oh, we said paradise is not. I'm trolling, to be honest with you. I'm wilding right now. But this is fun. I'm really actually enjoying doing this while also realizing how difficult it is to really break all of these down.
You already knew that. That's how I ended up at your driveway, via the highway, byway of flat. See, now I'm just oversharing publicly about two private people.
It's direct. Get to somebody's house from driving on the highway due to a flight. That was one of the first ways I saw her. Times I went to see her, that's what was done. But at the same time, um, despite writing a whole poem about my relationship, and spending, what this takes 4 minutes to deliver. I've done it 3 times in these public platforms, and they get recorded and replayed and all that. Despite all of that, there's really not a lot that y'all do know nor will know about us. Like, that's always one thing that's fascinating about me. I hide in plain sight. I talk about me all the time. I tell stories about myself all the time, and yet there's still so much, about me that's unknown and will stay so, because that's not, that's not how I move. If you notice, even some of the other poems people have heard, and I might say something outlandish about something that happened to me and I didn't like, one thing I will do for the foreseeable future is leave names out of it. I'm really just talking about the action. I'm turning the action into clever words that give me, help my mental, get me booked, bring me around like-minded people, and all that type of stuff. That's now the purpose. That person's irrelevant. They don't matter. But the moment, I took it and made it into my benefit.
So forgive my zeal. I'm just here to honor an oddity, revere a rarity, praise a princess, give a queen a cue like action.
So now we're coming up on wrapping up the poem. And so I went on a little run of alliteration. And again, tonal alliteration, if that's even a term. So honor an oddity, revere a rarity, praise a princess, give a queen a cue. So there are your pairs of alliteration. That's one. And that fourth one, I didn't say give a queen a cue like action. There's cue like the cue to say your line or begin the scene or do the thing, right? And when you're, play, television, movies, usually you got that person in the back yelling action. That's your cue. But also, I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi, also known as Qs. And I have given myself away, if you remember, to my queen. Again, was not there when originally written. She went to Queens College, so there's that. But again, full disclosure, that's not. I didn't do that. I didn't have that in mind when I wrote this. Okay, we go from give a queen a cue like action to those speak louder than words. Actions.
And those speak louder than words, but I can do both. So when I say I can handle a pair of these, I also mean double entendres.
So yeah, I'm about that action, and I'm pretty decent with words as well. As I said, I can do both. So when I say I can handle a pair of these, I also mean double entendres. I can do both of those. So handling, a pair, again, the literal physical sense, and then handle parodies and parody and all that type of stuff. Now, I've had this conversation with peers, with fellow poets. Pair of D's, I really can't make that truly 100% make sense, because double entendres is a thing, right? So it's like pair of them is really two double entendres, which is four meanings, which I haven't been doing. I have them in the poem, but I haven't been doing them. So pair of double entendres doesn't fully make sense, but it's good enough that we're gonna let me rock. And that's exactly what happens. For all I know, it actually is a way to stretch it. Like, by all means, hop in the comments, let me know so I can say, oh yeah, no, this totally makes sense. But I am perfectly fine with one of those. It doesn't technically fit. It's not technically accurate, but it fits what was just being said. And so we like it. I can live with that. Perfectly fine utilizing that. I have no shame. with it because I jumped out of the way to let y'all know. You know, so if I start getting big and I get those goofy ass uh, internet trolls, it's like, well, you can't really get me on that. I got me on that. Go find something else to do.
I lyrically love on this lady with alliteration littered all through this alliteration. Will I praise her with my tongue?
All right, so I say lyrically love on this lady and then mention alliteration. So you got the L's, then you got the litter used within three words right after that. And then finally, do I praise her with my tongue? Praise her with my tongue being a double meaning. One, I've spent this whole poem speaking highly of her, and the other one is absolutely none of y'all business. But also, yes, that's what that meant.
And she likes to rewind these poems, so hopefully one day it'll all make sense. And like Common, I'll tell you the rest when I see you. Peace.
There's a combination of real talk with some cleverness. So she listens to my poems a lot, which I appreciate it. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'd never really felt like my future partner, it was not gonna be a requirement that they're really into poetry. Just don't be opposed to it. Don't be over here bothered that there are women in the poetry scene and I get along with them. Like, be secure enough to not be on that energy. But as it turned out, God saw fit to give me someone who is legitimately probably my biggest fan. Not mad at it at all. Appreciate that. So being that she does like to listen, she says it, she's like, okay, yeah, that fourth listen, I got one thing I didn't the other time. And seventh listen, I got one other thing I didn't. Like, we had a conversation on one of the other poems, breaking down some of them, and probably will continue to do for the foreseeable future, because I'm not going to stop writing like this as long as God continues to give me that gift and that ability, right? So as more listens bring in more things, maybe one day it'll all make sense. There's that. So then we say, so pure poetry was the first time that I said, and also like Common. People understand the I'll tell you the rest when I see you. They know that's a line from Common. Shout out to Jay Dilla on that song. That's definitely a legendary joint, The Light. But I think a lot of people missed that right before I said one day it'll all make sense. That was one of Common's early albums. So basically, Common is bookended by an album here and a line from one of his poems. So again, that was very, very much love that I came up with that. I'm gonna try not to overdo this, but I absolutely love when it does make sense, that I was able to end the song. Okay, so I guess this is or technically a triple as well. So peace is how Common ended that verse. Peace is how I'm ending my poem with the deuces that I chuck most times that I perform it. And poems are called pieces, so sometimes people conclude what they just said with "in peace." So all those fit to again put a bow or exclamation point on a very, very reference heavy poem. What makes this one of my favorite poems is it's very, very layered, it's very complex, very clever, it's very bar heavy, and all that type of stuff for your hip hop heads, your nerds, your lyricists, your those who like complexity just as much as I like creating them. However, the premise is very real, very relatable. I hope other people either have someone like this that they feel like this about, or still believe that they will. I mean, it took me a long time to get to a relationship at this level, and it took me putting up with and dealing with a lot of nonsense and learning lessons from those. So, that's why I'm very, very appreciative and happy to express my, joy on it. Like, I have some other poems, and it's like, even the ones where I talk, where I have like a wild line or I'm speaking aggressively against whoever, there's still some uniting. I invite the crowd to join, like, hey, you can relate to this. You probably have a situation similar to what I'm talking about. This is dedicated to unnecessary attitudes and things along that nature. But I'm also kind of encouraging them, like I'm giving them words to describe the situation that they might not have came up with themselves, or they don't have the words for. Like that's the purpose of a poet. But here is just like I knew I wanted to have some poems that are on the positive side, that can be uh, profanity free. Wow, words have just gotten real hard all of a sudden. It's crazy. But yeah, profanity free, something I can, don't have to be, like, okay, what's the environment? Can I say it here? Now granted, is it was a little bit of innuendo, but I don't think it's nothing crazy. That in many cases I can't just either maybe even exclude it or just say it, and it's not super vulgar. So, but it's still, again, still is elite writing, still conveys a very important message, and it's on that positive side because we see that a lot. I mean, I'm recording this and Men's Mental Health Month, although I'm probably not releasing it in June. But there are a lot of people, and even outside of just men, a lot of times poets are associated with pain, and the best pieces are heartbreak and injustice and things like that. And while I don't want to say those are easy because they're not easy, they cost for sure, internally, but you can find powerful ways to express displeasure. So it's important to try to keep that energy and find really good ways to express something that you feel strongly, feel good about, love, respect, revere, give a queen okay, that hold in high regard, like be able to express that, well, cleverly, properly, confidently. And that's what we did here. So I think I've repeated that enough times. I appreciate y'all who are interested, who are asking for it, and then those who, whether they did or didn't know they needed or didn't know they wanted a breakdown like that. I would love for fellow poets to do something similar on one of your pieces. Like it's always good, like whether it's how did you come up with your poet name, or what made you, like what was the inspiration behind this poem that has really, really touched and reached others and become one of the staples, one of your signature pieces and things like that. So once again, appreciate y'all listening. This has been another episode of the Smart Dumb Podcast, and I'm out. Have a good one.